You do your job well. You hit deadlines. You solve problems before they escalate. You do not create drama. You do not require management attention. You show up, deliver, and leave. And somewhere in that pattern, you have built a quiet confidence that this is what professional security looks like. That competent, low maintenance, reliable people are the ones organizations protect. Then the restructuring came, and the wrong person survived. Not the first time, every time. My name is Zik, and what I want to show you today is not a story about unfairness. It is a story about a system operating exactly as designed, a system whose actual optimization target is not performance, not merit, and not contribution. Once you see the real target, every inexplicable decision you have ever witnessed at work will stop feeling inexplicable permanently. Picture someone. 6 years at the same organization, strong performer by every visible metric, never missed a deadline, cross-trained 2 colleagues, documented every process they owned, built clean handoff protocols for each of their responsibilities. When something broke, they fixed it. When something could be improved, they improved it. Their manager trusted them completely. Then the restructuring arrived. The organization needed to reduce headcount. The decisions came down. This person was on the list. The colleague who had generated 3 formal complaints in 2 years was not. The colleague who had missed multiple project deadlines across 4 consecutive quarters was not. The colleague whose entire domain of responsibility existed only in undocumented institutional memory that lived nowhere but inside their own head, that person was not on the list. The question this person was left sitting with was, how does this make any sense? Here is the answer. The organization did not make a performance error, it made a workload calculation. And the calculation, run honestly through the lens of what the system actually optimizes for, produced a completely rational result. The problem was never the decision. The problem was the assumption that the decision was about performance at all. It was not. It was never about performance. The workload calculation. Every time a complaint is filed about an underperforming colleague, a process begins at the management level that has almost nothing to do with the validity of the complaint. The process is a cost assessment, not a moral assessment, not a fairness review, a direct calculation of what resolving this situation would require from the people responsible for resolving it. Here is the mechanism. Removing an employee requires documentation, process, risk tolerance, and time. It requires identifying and onboarding a replacement, accepting a performance gap during the transition, and absorbing the personal liability of a decision that might be challenged. Every one of those costs lands on the manager making the call. And if the total cost of removal in managerial time, attention, and risk exceeds the total cost of continued tolerance, the system produces one outcome. The complaint is acknowledged, recorded, and quietly set aside. You were never asking for accountability. You were asking someone to voluntarily increase their own workload, and they declined. The protected employee is not protected because they are valued. They are protected because removing them is more expensive than tolerating them. The expectation calibration effect. There is a second mechanism that operates more slowly and more invisibly. When you perform consistently at a high level, you do something to the organization that feels like an achievement but functions as a liability. You raise the baseline expectation of what your role produces. You become the standard. And standards, once established, must either be maintained in others or explained as exceptions. Both options require managerial effort. The chronically underperforming colleague has done something structurally opposite. Through sustained, predictable, low-level dysfunction, they have trained the people above them to expect less. The bar has been lowered so gradually that anything marginally above their floor reads as acceptable. Their dysfunction has become the stable state. And stable states, even dysfunctional ones, do not require intervention. Intervention is the thing management is always trying to avoid. This explains the pattern you have probably witnessed firsthand: a manager responding with visible frustration to your minor error while extending what appears to be infinite patience to a colleague who makes that same error continuously. The response is not irrational, it is calibrated. Your error violated an expectation. Their error confirmed one. Violated expectations require a response. Confirmed expectations do not. You are being held to the standard you built. They are being held to the far lower standard they negotiated through sustained underperformance. The compensation trap. Here is the mechanism that operates most quietly and costs the most. At some point, probably gradually, probably without a single conscious decision, you began working around the underperforming colleague instead of through them. You absorbed the tasks they were not completing. You built processes that routed critical work away from their gaps. You kept things functional despite the dysfunction. You called it professionalism. You called it being a team player. What you actually did was remove the operational pain that was the only realistic trigger for managerial intervention. Every time you compensated, you solved the problem that would have eventually forced a decision. You made the status quo sustainable. And a sustainable status quo, regardless of what is producing it, will be maintained by any system that is optimizing for stability over performance. The arithmetic of this situation is precise. You are now performing portions of two roles. You were being compensated for one. The person generating none of the displaced output was receiving equivalent compensation. And management had evidence that the system was working because you had made it work. You did not prove your value. You proved that your compensation for the dysfunction was adequate. Those are not the same thing. Every time you covered for the underperformer, you gave management permission to keep them. You solved their problem for free. The extraction cost calculation. The final mechanism explains the restructuring pattern that seems most irrational from the outside. When leadership is building a reduction list, they are not constructing a ranking of performance. They are assessing the operational cost of each person's absence. Two questions drive the list. Whose removal creates immediate, uncontrollable disruption? Whose removal can be absorbed with manageable redistribution? The person who documented everything, cross-trained their replacements, and made their role fully transferable has minimized their own extraction cost. Their departure is a transition. It creates work, but not chaos. The system can absorb it. The person who hoarded institutional knowledge, became the sole point of contact for a critical relationship, and never documented a process in 6 years has maximized their extraction cost. Their departure creates chaos. And an organization managing a restructuring that is already generating chaos will almost always choose to preserve the known source of manageable dysfunction over creating an additional source of unpredictable disruption. The person who made themselves easiest to replace was removed first, not despite their professionalism, because of it. The system rewards being difficult to extract, not excellent, difficult to extract. Here is where the pattern compounds into something more serious than a single restructuring outcome. Because the longer you operate inside this system without understanding how it actually functions, the more your behavior reinforces the dynamic that is working against you. Each time you compensate for the underperformer, the management dependency on your compensation deepens. Each time you file a complaint and watch it dissolve, you spend a unit of credibility that does not regenerate easily. Each time you raise an improvement initiative and encounter resistance, you register not as someone solving a problem, but as someone threatening an equilibrium that the system has already decided to protect. Your effort and your excellence are being absorbed and redirected in ways that benefit the system rather than your position within it, and you are doing the absorbing voluntarily because nobody explained the mechanism. The underperforming colleague is not learning anything new. They mastered this years ago. They understand precisely and intuitively that their survival depends not on output but on making their removal inconvenient. They have been optimizing for inconvenience since the beginning. You have been optimizing for excellence. In a system that measures convenience rather than contribution, that is a significant strategic disadvantage. You have been playing a performance game inside a system that was never keeping score on performance. If this is landing for you, take 2 seconds to hit the like button. It genuinely helps the channel, and it tells me to keep making content like this. The reframe is this. Stop thinking about job security as something produced by excellent performance. Start thinking about it as something produced by the cost of your absence. Those are different things. And in most organizations, they require different behaviors to build. Excellent performance tells the organization what you produce when you are present. Extraction cost tells the organization what it loses when you are not. The second number is the one that survives a restructuring. The first one is the one that gets praised in performance reviews and then made redundant when the budget changes. Building genuine extraction costs is not about hoarding information or manufacturing artificial dependency. That is the short-term, brittle version of this strategy. The durable version is about becoming deeply embedded in the outcomes the organization cannot afford to lose: revenue, retention, risk management, cost efficiency, and making sure the connection between your work and those outcomes is visible to the people making structural decisions. 3 specific moves. First, stop compensating for the underperformer this week, not with a confrontation. Simply redirect the work back to where it belongs and allow the natural consequence of their underperformance to surface in front of the people who have the authority to respond to it. You cannot force a decision, but you can stop preventing one. Second, this month, identify the 2 outcomes your organization is most directly measuring right now. Write down every significant piece of work you are currently doing and assess honestly which items connect directly to those outcomes. Reallocate 30% of your effort from the low connection items to the high connection ones. Visibility of impact, not volume of activity, is what survives difficult decisions. Third, have one direct conversation with your manager this month about your trajectory. Not a hint, a specific statement of where you want to be, and a direct question about what the organization needs to see to get you there. This conversation converts you from a stable asset into a flight risk in the best possible way. It creates urgency around your development at a moment when you are still present to benefit from it. There is a version of professional commitment that goes unrecognized for years. Not because the people around it are blind, because the commitment was directed at a target the system was not measuring. The effort was real, the competence was genuine, the reliability was consistent, and none of it translated into the security it was supposed to produce, because the system was running a calculation that those inputs did not affect. You were not protected less than the underperformer because you were less valuable. You were protected less because you were less costly to remove. And in a system optimizing for management convenience, removal cost is the variable that determines survival, not merit, not contribution, not years of genuine, documented, unrewarded excellence. That is a hard thing to sit with. It should be, but it is also correctable. Not through additional effort at the level you already occupy, through a precise adjustment in what you make visible, what you stop absorbing, and how clearly you communicate the cost of losing you. The people who survive are not always the best at the job. They are the ones who made leaving them the most inconvenient option available. And if this gave you something concrete to work with, consider subscribing. I make content like this every single week. No performance, no noise, just the workplace truths most people spend years learning the expensive way. I'm Zik. Thanks for listening. I'll see you in the next video.